Good morning and welcome to another Managing Life's Changes. My name is Ronald Allen, and I see I'm falling back into that terrestrial radio introduction style. I have to stop that, right? That's not what podcasting is all about. Well, I'll tell you, it's been an interesting 24 hours. And the discussion today is going to be around confused communications. I think it's appropriate because I just heard, my wife has told me that there's going to be the residual of snow that's going to be up in the north region of Pennsylvania, the Poconos, and we might just get light flurries, if not a little cold rain. So that kind of changes our potential day's activity. While at the same time, and I submit this to you, what we hear, what we're even told, and even instructed, is that really, or how much weight should we give that to what we are trying to achieve? I'll give you some examples, and as usual, I always suggest that we have pen and pad, we have tablet to record, document. I do like tasks on Google because they feed into my calendar. And so there is a definitive time stamp, if you will, date and time stamp. And instead of being a laundry list, a to-do list, it's more focused on what I'm trying to support with my objectives, right? So as I'm going through this career change, really, and even though, and I've been doing this for the coaching component for about, I would say, the better part of 10 years, I'm finding that I'm tweaking. I'm diagnosing what I'm doing, the outcomes, and then how I feel I need to adjust. All of that is communications. And I know a lot of people will say, yeah, but that's fundamental. Do you have it down pat? Can you arrest those emotional states that impact on what you're physically trying to do, and more importantly, what you've expressed to others that you're trying to do, accomplish? That's what managing change through effective communications is about. We can work on the technicals, and we should. The fundamentals of engaging with different socially identified people, a king, a queen, a barrister, an adversary. a potential business partner, a collaborator. All of these have different protocols. And I like using the analogy of the slug's antenna. And you see them constantly moving, testing the density of the air, the temperature, the wetness, the everything that gives you a sense of where you are and what potentially could happen. So, confused communications. Let's talk about some really big ones. Some of the conversation will be difficult because we have failed to arrest the impact of what it does to us as people and the social acceptance that has been laid down. I'll give you a classic. This is the classic sexual harassment. Now we can talk about HR. Oh, my tea is here. Thank you very much, my dear. Please don't mistake my wife just bringing me this cup of tea as if this is part of our ritual. I just did not make it today, and she noticed. She brought it up. So that is, by the way, right there. That's a classic of recognizing what someone needs, recognizing perhaps even a behavioral trait, social behavioral trait, and providing it. Let me take you back to an earlier program where we just discussed about and shared with you a story about a young man who came into a bakery with his two parents and exhibited frustration. And I said to him, you know, you're never going to be the parent if you keep asking questions. He was asking, and you could see his frustration. You could see his lack of temperance in working with his parents, in helping his parents, in serving his parents. That's the same thing. You must know, certainly after a certain time of being with somebody, right? You can't keep asking, do you want this? Do you want that? There are certain rituals, right? So going back to the sexual harassment, which is really the biggest one that I feel is such an abuse. It's like, what was the expression? Insult to injury. Well, think about it. If you allow those who are recognized as leaders in your organization, in their space, in their ability to deliver good services and benefit to the business, and even breadwinners, we're talking the abusers in family homes as well, same construct there, right? Same construct. They are considered and seen and communicated to as the leader, as the person that's providing for the business. If you allow them to prey or allowed to prey on younger members of our community, of our company, of our society, then you can't just have these federally and state mandated sexual harassment classes and think everything is fine. The communication is actually, we've covered our ass. Yes, that's what it really means. And as much as we continue to expand on it and say that this is being adjusted and these are the open door policies, and we don't have retribution on those that talk and reveal that behavior, the reality is quite the reverse. Ask any woman. Oh, you thought I was going to say ask any man. Ask any woman. That communication is so fundamental in our society that many women just simply take themselves out of the belief that it would be addressed, unless someone actually takes that baton, if you will, and takes the individual to task. So we've had some examples. In fact, there was a great one. I wasn't able to pull it up on YouTube, but pretty much everything is there. And it was a coach in a Midwestern state in the United States. I guess that term is only used in America, Midwestern state. You don't say that in other parts of the world. So it is US. And he heard about the not hoaxing, but the what was that? Hazing of a young girl by some of his team members. He brought them all together. He said, "We have a serious situation. We have to discuss this very unpleasant situation, which has been brought about by members of your community." And I love the way he framed it, brought about by members of your community. And he removed the culprit who instigated it. He then framed out why he was penalizing everybody else. You know the expression, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. If we don't elevate the conversation, how can we honestly say that we're maturing as a species? Well, we can make all the technical and physical components that give the illusion that we are sophisticated and we're capable. Those are just tools. And I think we've got the equation upside down. Those are just tools. This computer is simply a tool, is a medium to reach more people. And everything that supports it is wonderful, great, and marvelous until we bring it into the purview of the majority of our community, of our society, from young to old, and show them how to use it so they get the benefit of it. That's the rubber meeting the road. That's the nexus point. That's what allows the next generation not to have to struggle so much. You may have heard, I spoke about an opportunity I had with some engineers, Lockheed Martin engineers. And because I'm close to Fort Dix McGuire Air Force Base, there is actually a center, and it deals with research on multiple communication systems. And I was allowed to come in and speak with a group of them. I was not a speaker, I was simply there to listen, quite frankly. The gentleman I had met at a function, we shared some ideas, conversation, and he said, you know, as an outsider and someone who's not steeped in engineering, I'd like you to come and speak with some of my engineers. I did not know that the engineers were going to be split pretty much down the line between younger members who were more than academically and not so much the experience, but certainly academically qualified, and then those who are senior, have been in the business 20, 30, even 40 years. Been with the company 10, 15 years, by the way. We got to a point where one of the older members said he doesn't know why or how the younger engineers were so fearless. That was the word he used, fearless. So we spoke some more. I said, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by fearless? You guys are you're not at the peak of your careers. You are in the forefront of your profession, right? You're at the forefront. You're at Lockheed Martin. You do stuff, you use information, you use models, you use historical data to push the boundaries of physics, chemistry, all of those very fundamental subjects that make our world exist. Well, a couple of minutes down the road, half an hour, we're still into it. We're supposed to wrap up. And I realized that the older members had laid the groundwork for the younger members to be so free. And what do I mean by that? And a couple of them even asked me that. I said, well, we had to figure, I say we, because even I figured out how much displacement of water goes through a 1/4 inch pipe as opposed to a 3/4 inch pipe, as opposed to a 1-2 inch pipe. Oil being moved through the world. When you're piping that oil from the land to a barge, a tanker, not a barge, but a tanker, it takes a certain amount of hours to get 1 million gallons, what have you, onto that tanker. And you have to understand that that's a calculation. Well, the younger members already knew that. They were told what it was. Now, if they can find ways of speeding that up, then that's a new frontier. Same thing with light, speed of sound, right? Speed of sound. When we talk about timelines, right? If you think of linear, right? Something is linear, then it does take time from here to here. Where am I? There you go. From here to here, right? It takes time. If you fold it, the construct, the idea of just folding the paper, folding time, means that there is no time spent going from one space to another. We have to wrap our minds around that, right? If you're being told one thing and yet reality is something else, how do you reconcile that? More importantly, how about this? Forget about reconciling it. How about just saying, okay, these are different constructs that can exist. And it starts to break through the frustration of why I don't have an answer, why I can't break through in communications with this person. You've heard the expression, agree to disagree, right? Agree to disagree, to disagree. Husbands and wives do it all the time. Husbands and wives do it all the time. Lovers break up over it. Right? That's part of our social communication right there. So these engineers taught me so much about the interaction of people, certainly in I'll say disciplined, purposeful engagement, right? If they're building a component, if they're designing a system, there are rules, there are steps that must be taken, there are risks to be assessed, there are tools to assess the risk. Quality must be validated. Oh, I'm stealing that project management terms again. I tell you, take a course in project management, even if you're not going to be a project manager, and begin to understand the sequential use of the data. Then, and this is what I've said to some of the people that I've worked with, jumble it up. Jumble it up. Don't make it in that linear sequential order all the time. Jumble it up. And you'll be amazed how that frees your mind to think differently. You see, I think one of the real challenges behind all of this communication is cultural not stick to itiveness, cultural bias. We're taught and shown and instructed A, B, C, D, E, F. And I've said this before. I think it's worth saying again and again and again and again. Life does not roll out A, B, C, D. So when you give an instruction in that fashion, these are the 5 steps. Is it always in that order? No. To start up a plane and get it up in the air, absolutely. To start up a rig and get it out to the ocean, absolutely. Those are safety checks. Those are protocols. Those are processes. Life is different. And I think that's where we can enjoy the duality of both, the thinking of both. There are some other means of, or rather technologies, and I alluded to one the other day. NASA, we need, and Kennedy actually expressed this. He said, how do we get to the moon? Sputnik, for those of you, and you don't have to be alive at that time. you could have learned it. You could have found out about it. You could have explored, especially with what's going on now with the race to Mars and having commercial flights into space. I mean, it's incredible stuff. At the same time, it's not so credible. Why? because we're on that trajectory. When Kennedy said, what do we have to do to get a man on the moon and bring his butt back? All bets were off with the limited thinking that we didn't have the science and the brain power to accomplish that. We did, and we've gone further. Yes, there's always going to be some unforeseen risks. The Columbia explosion, right? Um, by and large, the Apollo missions helped to make space exploration, the existing space station, which is an international effort, the race to Mars, an international effort because of the cultures that are involved. So let me answer a question. And I wish we had a little chat box here. We really need a little chat box. If we can come together to do sophisticated research, exploration, partnerships to create things, why can't we begin to push that kind of thinking down through society's communities, cultural communities? Why must we still behave as if I must beat you over the head in order to get that egg from that ostrich? I've come to like duck eggs, by the way. I didn't grow up with duck eggs, but I think I'm fortunate that I'm with Miriam, where she just explores. She loves animals. She went to Tuskegee veterinary school, and she loves everything dealing with nature's best. Ostrich eggs, we've also had. That's a little different. Those are a little bit more pungent, shall I say. Confused communications. When there's a group of people that I also work with, and some of them exhibit some really extreme behaviors because of the way I look at it as how they've been not just programmed, but introduced to life. And yet there is a resilience that I identify, a resilience that perhaps is so fundamental to human beings that we say, I want to live. I want to get away from this, what I do not like, this environment, this experience, these relationships. And I want to change the narrative. I want to change the course, the trajectory that I'm on. And they have no instruction, by the way. This is not necessarily, and certainly in many cases, it's not at all a structured environment of, well, this is what you do to survive and grow, right? There's a great article from the Harvard Review that talks about from pain and suffering, from setbacks, from wicked change, we need to learn how to grow, not just sustain our existence, because you're basically on a treadmill, aren't you? And I've learned that, yes, we can see a lot in textbooks. We have all the psychology, and psychiatric research. At the same time, there's always a kernel who seems to just sprout up a little faster, a little bit more earnest, a little bit more on purpose. And I take notice of those. And these are the people that will be more observant in their behavior and say, well, okay, you're saying this. This is my experience. This is where I want to go. What resources out here that will help me fast track that? What order should I execute? To what intensity should I execute each necessary mental thought, physical action? How do I restrain the response if I don't like it? Like fencing, parry. We did fencing at the college for a while. I loved it. I loved fencing. Um, very tactical, very strategic. And there was a good bit of psychology because you might express to the person that you're with, by the way, my reach is 3/4 of an inch longer than yours. You'd even say my footprint. We call it footprint today in terms of how much energy we use and therefore the impact on the earth. But my footprint, left, front, and back feet, is wider, so I can reach you again that much easier, more so than you. That's a communication. That was a really interesting bit of psychology that we exhibited to one another. But when we talk about our society, talk about our communications, our society and communications, is it that there are multiple interests expressing themselves on us, imposing themselves in many cases, and yet we still realize we need to go our own way? We still can craft our own message. Look at commercials. Here's another area. Commercials. Now, within some are in 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and the traditional ones we know are in 60 seconds. And then, of course, for Super Bowl and big events, they can be up to 2 minutes. It's an info commercial, 2 to 3 minutes. It's an info commercial. What if we could take that same approach and apply it to ourselves, to what we want? Now, I've managed to do that in some cases, and I'll give you an example. Putting together a press kit, and every 6 months or so, I renew my press kit. So I thought, what if I use that same approach to communicate to people that have asked me to help them with building their profiles, and in some cases, resumes, and called it a networking tool, a profile builder. A network tool, profile builder. Now, some of you may know my frustration. Although when I say that, I say, well, wait a minute, just release the frustration. It's no longer yours. So I have to rephrase that. I have to rephrase that too. Some of you may know that when you get an invitation to connect on LinkedIn, for example, the person might say, one, LinkedIn said we're compatible, we should connect. Okay. Two, I saw your profile on LinkedIn, and I'm very interested to put you on a peg of my networking connections. That's very endearing. I want to communicate with that brick. Three, let's cooperate. Here's my offer. Let's collaborate. Here's my offer. Well, that's asinine to say the least. And fourthly, the one that just doesn't get it. They just say, I want to be friends. I want to be part of your network. None of them have exhibited any real interest that they've taken the time to identify something that you both have done, you both have been involved in. That is fundamental. Go back to the kindergarten classes, go back to the daycare centers. Kids will come together and say, look what I have. Oh, mine is like yours. Would you like to share? Hey, why are you so happy? Why are you so sad? Right? That is so fundamental. And yet, as we get older and we're supposed to be more mature, questionable to say the least, we forget the fundamentals of rapport building, confused communications. Where do we lose it? Why do we lose it? Why do we discount the importance of it? The first few programs we started this week, I mentioned that when you wake up in the morning, consider meditation. Then the proposal was, what is meditation for you? Is it taking a walk around the block? Is it sitting quietly in a room? Is it listening to a particular kind of music? Is it consuming a certain kind of beverage? Still waiting on that Malanga box. My wife has assured me that the Malanga tea is coming, and we will make a big crescendo, big showing of it. We'll show you this Malanga tea. I hope I get some royalties out of that daggum effort. No, seriously. We are communicating how we have been instructed. And it's not until we realize that the outcomes are not favorable or not at the level that we wish that we can then make a change. We're great at following the requirements for social interaction when it comes to business. We're great when I say, let me qualify that when I finish this part. We're great at following the social protocols when we wish to date. We are great when we are in the public arena of fraternities, sororities, professional organizations. We are turned on. We are acutely aware of what we should do. We may not be able to do it great. We may not be able to do it well. That's why we have Toastmasters. And there's a plug. We do have the makings of how to do it. So we need to then, and we can benefit from that individual who does not have the instruction and has come from a marginalized environment of lack of communication and or a misdirection of communication, which is probably more accurate. We talked about what's the opposite of love, and it's not hate, it's indifference. When we talk about relationships, both at work and in our personal lives, it is the ability to rein in our own emotional reactions to things and have some humility to come back to that person. And I've come to believe that word sorry is meaningless. Sorry is for children. Sorry is for those younger minds that haven't learned the sensitivities of social interaction. As adults, I find it embarrassing, annoying, even condescending for an adult to say to another, I'm sorry. What's my supposition? My supposition is the fact that you already know what you did was wrong, but you did it. No excuses, no outs. What you do is you act in a way to begin to rebuild rapport. You rebuild that sense of the other person wanting to work with you. It may never happen. That's your fault. That's the penalty of miscommunications. That's the penalty of being so arrogant to think that you could do something without recourse. Much of our confused communications comes out of a lack of full disclosure. And I'll give you some examples. Back in the day, we had Second World War. We had a number of countries, Italy, Germany, Japan, and others, that were considered the enemy of the rest of the world. At the end of the war, there was court hearings, there were judicial procedures, there was economic arrangements and collaborations, there was labor repositioning at different levels of, should I say, academic excellence that Europe and America and other countries who were allied together farmed off that intellectual capital. The average person, 20, 30 years later, was still talking about those enemies. Yet the economic and corporate complexes had already moved on. They had moved on because they had to survive. They had to, and they did take advantage, rightly so, of that intellectual capital. So, one question I did have, even as a kid, was wait a minute, if we're studying these captains of industry who are utilizing those enemy resources and enemy minds, why are we still referring to them as enemy? That was then, this is now. Can we not move off the proverbial toadstool and realize that that's the same approach we should take to friendship, to um, people that come from those countries that have nothing to do with the ideology that was expressed by the leader at the time? Moreover, and I've seen this over and over again, most of the time, the citizens of the country want nothing to do with the kind of warmongering that's going on. Now, that's once again, I told you there's going to be some anchoring of hardcore issues that people don't talk about. Yet, those are the underlying currents that prevent us from engaging with each other in a meaningful way. They confuse ourselves first because of that perspective. Secondly, what we communicate then is not favorable to a desired outcome. Or maybe it is, and we just don't give a damn, right? And then with that other person, they are afraid to express themselves because they think they are seen in that same light. I'll give you an example. We have Toastmasters. We are part of McGuire Achievers right here in McGuire Air Force Base. And we have people, because of the COVID, primarily because of the COVID-19 shutdown, that will come in remotely and they're local and even within our county, living locally. We also have people, though, who come from as far away as India. In fact, when we have our 6:30 in the evening session, there's a gentleman who wakes up at 3:35 a.m. just to be on our call. Now, initially, we say, well, he's from India. He's from India. Okay. So now you have to kind of register each person's identity or thought process and perspective of what that means. He's a person from India. And if you know nothing about India and you listen to the news, you're going to probably get the wrong perspective. Secondly, then we said, well, wait a minute. Well, I'm saying, I'm assessing. Then I said, well, wait a minute. He's with Toastmasters. Okay, safe. Right? We have a common thread. And then I realized, wait a minute. I want him to speak to us about why he gets up at 3:45 to be on our call. Because I felt there was an intangible conversation value there that the others would understand, would appreciate, could benefit from. Wow. What we got was an incredible opportunity for this individual who counted the timing where I wanted him to speak so that he could then get credit as a speech for a speech if we pushed him to a later time in our meeting schedule. Not only that, so now I know he strategizes. He's from India. He's with Toastmasters. We know this. He knows how to position himself when he's asked. In other words, when I'm asked for something, I ask for something in return. It's natural. It's a way of ensuring there is a mutually collaborative effort. I don't just give. Yes, I ask for something back. And that's what he did. It was brilliant. I'd love to do it, Ron. Do you mind if we do it at a different time in the program? And we were all in agreement. No problem. But if you're hesitant, if you're ambivalent, if you're not accustomed to that repertoire, that way of communicating. I'm getting over myself here, right? But that's what I love, to look for words and be creative with words. Okay. So anyway, if you're not accustomed to that kind of exchange of ideas and communication, then you will be uncomfortable. That in and of itself sets you up to learn, right? Because there are people around the world that communicate very differently. Well, when he did do a short 3-minute speech, we found out he's a certified accountant. He has children. He is married. He does join one or two other clubs, but he finds ours the most receptive, the most welcoming. And the fact that we even give him leadership roles, Toastmasters is speaking and leadership development. We gave him roles in the past. So we immediately found out that, guess what? This guy has a whole other dimension. And he said he was an introvert, for goodness sake. Absolutely brilliant. You're not going to get that. You're not going to find that out by bringing the baggage of misconception, of a perspective that's not accurate, that's not updated. As I'm saying these words, I'm thinking in project management. As you're going through your project, you're assessing risk, you're looking at quality control, you're determining the accuracy and consistency of the good product or benefit that you're delivering, and you're constantly filling in notes, building that library of information to confirm the assumptions that you used in the beginning are delivering the desired outcomes at whatever phase or milestone or phase gate that you need. So there's a crossover. I guess my point, my point is using the approaches in business, in your personal life, and the emotional, because they are, desires and mental thinking application of your personal life in business. There's a gentleman who I went to school with, and he did reach out to me. He was in public office in Gibraltar for many years. And I would love to get his perspective on how he saw himself then and now how he sees the role and the need to communicate now, because the culture has changed. The social makeup has changed. Confused communications. Let's see what else we have that can tweak your day into being more favorably experienced. Here's one for you. You know the expression agree to disagree. What if we turn that on its head? I'm gonna have my tea here. This is a pretty cool teapot. It actually has a lid. This is a small intermission, by the way. It has the lid. It has the teapot, and then it has the cup. Really cool, huh? And it's not even Kwanzaa yet. I'll tell you, the podcast world has really changed everything, how we connect and communicate with one another. I think, I guess it's also a matter of your subject, right? If we were doing social media marketing or SEO, coding, any of the sciences, you might not have a casual fare to it. Although that approach may very well endear your audience. When we think of managing change through effective communications, we have structured our overall programming with four main components. One being you, the id, the individual, because the communication starts from you, because the inputs, the influences, the socialization is then represented, interpreted by you, and fed out into the world. We then look at family dynamics, which creates the id. Is it a positive? Is it a negative experience? Theology. I know most people will say, don't talk about theology. What if we adjusted, recalibrated that conversation to ask inquiry type questions? Not that I'm right, you're wrong, and I have to cut your head off. Moreover, how is the reality and acceptance of you, the individual, in that organization, in that belief? Because I believe it's separate. Where I think of faith and spirituality, I don't question it. We then look at careers and business, because careers and business, you all have to have a career. You have to work somewhere. Volunteer, it doesn't really matter. You are still working. And of course, careers where we extend ourselves and we invest long term. And we have to sometimes change loyalties. We have to adjust. In family, by the way, we also talk about our socialization, our culture that we've stemmed from, and how that culture is impacted by outside forces, colonialism, economics, political change, winds of change, theology, socialization, culture, right? All of these elements make up the individual and how we see the world and how we communicate with the world. So instead of just talking about how we might address in a formal setting or a non-formal setting, instead of just talking about how to write that proverbial letter of interest, and certainly in some of the fundamentals of how we behave in society, let's understand the root causes and if they're serving us correctly. That's the deal. Are they serving us correctly? Now, if you want to call that motivation, fine. You want to call that leverage? Absolutely. You want to call it propaganda? Rock and roll. Because we're understanding what our triggers are, and everybody has triggers. We are programmable minds. Our brains are incredible computers that if we begin to learn, notice I said, if we begin to learn how we interact with ourselves, we can then manage our state, we can manage situations we find ourselves in, and most important, we can decide if we want to respond to people's comments, advances, interests in, etc., etc., etc. It's fascinating if we look at it in that fashion, as opposed to, I have to do this. I don't have an alternative. I have responsibilities. We are the strangest creature on the planet. And many times we don't make sense. Our behavior and our desire, they don't jive. So my interest coming out of Pride Park College, which yes, it was influential with me. It taught me from guys from all around the world, and I think that's why I morphed to those kind of environments. You have to be alert. You have to be not so righteous because someone else's perspective will correct you. They will correct you because they have a position, a stake in the game. They have a point of view, and you need to respect that. If you intend to have a collaborative affair, an engagement, a socially engaging opportunity with them. I think that's where that started. Now, my parents, totally opposite. My mother, rock and roll, jump out of bed, run down the road, let's go, put the clothes on, let's do this. My father, on the other hand, was completely opposite. My point is a, a lot of your own ability or lack of ability to communicate stems from those environments. Oh, you can coax it with a nice dress or suit. You can clothe it in your academic excellence. When you are faced with different situations, good, bad, and everything in between, it is those root programming and social and cultural and theological teachings that will emerge. And I'm saying we have the ability, even at this age, 63 going on 6, to make adjustments, to make tweaks, to diagnose what works, what doesn't, and effectively change the way that we engage with people. And that's fun. That is the juice. That is what wakes me up at 4 o'clock, even though my wife woke me up at 2:45 this morning. My God in heaven. And welcome, welcome life. Because when I listen to the birds outside, when I hear my dogs and cats just flying around the house, even though we do have the dogs in one room, otherwise it'd be total chaos and mayhem. When I do reach out to family members that I can, not all of them, absolutely not, um, that's what juices me. So how do you keep that going? How do you? There was I think it was a friend of mine years and years ago. He said, "How do you keep going so when you're dead you don't even notice it?" Brilliant stuff, right? How do you keep going? How do you keep yourself motivated? How do you keep getting up every single day despite the frustration, setbacks, and you craft your life? Is it motivation? I don't think that word is enough. I think we have to go back into some of our psychology, and most importantly, how we're instructed and how we've been introduced to life and instructed how to deal with life, and then extrapolate forward as to what is our best future self. Who are the people around you that you respect and you welcome their advice that can help you with this journey? What is it about yesterday that you did so well that you can replicate today? What did you like about that experience? What did you feel good about that experience and replicate it today? How can we take the kernels of excellence from those who have gone before us? I'm thinking Tina Turner. I'm thinking Nina Simone. I'm thinking Shirley Bassey. These are people that got up every single day despite the ugliness of their professions. My goodness, right? You're steeped in a profession that you love. You've got a great skill. You've got capabilities. You've got competencies. You can go the next level that nobody else can go. And yet people still try to hold you back. And you still get up in the morning and communicate to yourself, here I am, right? What are those couple of songs? Ain't No Stopping Us Now. I'm Coming Up. You get knocked down, we get up again. What is it? Be Happy, right? What's that other one with Elton John? Um, there's a great one with by Elton John. These are mantras. These are ways of interrupting negative communications that are coming at you, and you can literally mentally roll those through your mind. You speak to yourself, and instead of listening to the ugliness that's out here, and there's a lot, right? You then say to yourself, okay, I'm fine with this. This is temporary, but what I'm doing, where I'm going, what I'm creating is what is really important. And it sounds like my dogs want to go for a walk. There's a great song, The Dogs Were Here First. And that's how I speak with my guys. I say you are here first, and I'm just here to help you along the way, to feed you, clothe you, wash you, take you for walks, make sure your health is right. That's the communication. So as your day rolls out, this is what, Friday, um, where I'm doing the program every day because it anchors my mornings, it projects where I'm going for the day. And I can always look back. This is really an interesting observation, which I literally just made. I can always look back down the road of the day, the hours, right? So you break the day, I break the day into four, um, 6 hour segments. And I say, what did I do that I'm happy with that helped me move closer, uh, begin to build what I'm looking to build? And if at 12 noon something happens that disrupts my day, I can look back to between 6 and 7, and say, it's not a bad day. It's not all bad. Something good happened, and I can choose to take this interruption, right? And I can flip it, and I can change it, and I can refocus myself. That's attitude. Because I can, because I'm a creature that my life source gave me the ability to do that, right? As you can hear, my dog and cat do not have that ability. They want to tear each other apart. Well, the dog wants to tear the cat apart, and he can't because he's in his room behind a gate, and we won't allow that. That's what this program is about. And the fundamentals, technicals, the methodologies that we use when we're working with clients, with coaching with people, with working with couples. Um, that is the root analysis we do. We pull out the underlying current. Think of the um, what is that? The aquifer, where the water is running through the strata, right, of rocks. We pull that out and we find out, what is that made up of? Does it serve your purpose? And if it doesn't, are you courageous enough? Are you ready enough to begin to address that need, that disruption that you have been brought into or adopted and is not serving your purpose? It's not motivation. I don't think of it as motivation. I think of it as identifying what it is that's causing it. And most importantly, extrapolating forward to your best future self. Then there is a time in everybody's life, even if it's for a moment, even if it's the mental observation of the opposite of what you're experiencing, that is what you want. You've never had it, you've never actually felt it, physically felt it. Mentally, you felt it, you've recognized it, you acknowledge it. That's the difference. And that's something that many people in the West don't appreciate as much. We don't realize that it is in our minds that we live. Therefore, our reality can be managed. Our reality can be managed. The outer manifestation of ourselves, absolutely. People can be hurling insults. Unfortunately, our capital found that they can also hurl the flag, um, in some macabre way of displeasure. At the same time, that's momentary. You know, in slavery and in sex trafficking, people express the phrase, you can take my body, you can't take my soul. So it's a deeper understanding, and we can get into that. We talk about the Asvadi, the four elements of life. The conversations are for us to get to know one another. The conversations is for us to begin to open up that conversation that we would not otherwise have. These conversations, these podcasts are to discover what's on our mind, what's important, what's potentially possible in working together. Because everything doesn't have to be on fire. Everything doesn't have to be loud and gregarious and in your face. There's a great TED talk where the woman says introverts need to be observed and appreciated. Because just like the slug's antenna, they're sensing the environment and then they give back, they give the feedback that says, this is how this should be approached, or this is an approach in terms of addressing a particular situation. That's valuable. That's an intangible that's an intangible that produces a tangible result. And I'll play my little banner here. This is pretty cool. I love these little tools. There you go. Identifying intangible assets in producing tangible results. Think of the balance sheet. Think of the tangible line item, the goodwill line item on a balance sheet. So with that, I wish you a great morning. Oh, we have a comment. There you go. Good morning, John. Thank you for your comment. I appreciate that. We can do a good morning back. See, we're learning. We are learning. We are styling. There you go. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. This is pretty cool. Again, communications takes into consideration everything that helps us recognize our own conversations, our self-talk, how we wish to communicate to others, and in what manner will serve both parties, because our intent is to create mutually beneficial outcomes, not just self-serving, I've got to win, because those are momentary, if not brief, victories. Consider that for the day. Take care, and I am going to play one of these cool musical banners that we've created here. Let me see where's my music. Enjoy the day. It's Friday. See you tomorrow morning. It's Saturday.